So, it seems like, a lot of stuff just keeps going on and it just never ends to surprise any of us what's going to happen. So, first thing I want to do is ask you about the newest, um, I guess, edict that came from our executive officer with the bars and things. What do you think about that ruling?
Well, I'm glad he's now putting the ball back into local government's court. In this case, the county judge. County judges across Texas will have the authorities put it upon them to decide when bars can open. Of course, the governor's order mandates the closure of bars until at least October 14th next week. So all bars still remain closed. But as you know, as we've gone through this pandemic, the conditions in local communities are quite different from one another. So I think we've got the public health professionals and we've got the local community in a place where we can now make a decision that's in the best interest of the San Antonio community, because in many cases the state has not acted, in my opinion, appropriate to some of our local communities, including San Antonio, with regard to the pace and the speed and the timing of openings.
I've never seen never in my life have I seen an executive or a leader, so to speak, at a national or even a state or local level, make a political mockery, so to speak, of a health crisis. Because now, at one point in time, he wanted to make all of the decisions. Now, like you said, it's up to the local county judges. So what do you think had to do with him changing his mind and moved in a different direction?
Well, I'm not really sure. I do know that this is a very difficult decision to make, and the food and beverage industry in San Antonio and across Texas have been hit very hard, and he's been hearing quite a lot from them. And I think that the complexity of the decision, you know, maybe he wants to punt to local governments, but you're right. The response, especially from the White House, has been totally inconsistent and counter to public health outcomes. And as it's gone down to the state, when the governor took over, the emergency orders and basically superseded all the local governments, we lost quite a bit of control with regard to the pandemic, including things like mask wearing. So, we feel like we're in the place where we can make a decision that's in the best interest of San Antonio.
Yeah, many people probably don't remember, but you had that really big opening that said take the pledge, and everybody had almost every industry covered in there what they needed to do to reopen, and it seems like that was really a great thing to do, and then all of a sudden the mayor, I mean the governor, took over, and since then, I mean, because we were in a pretty good place when that happened. And since then, I mean, it's cost so many lives and so many sicknesses and so much distress around the city. And I wonder, do you think those things will be felt at the ballot box?
Probably. I think that, especially from the top of the ticket, people have seen how the president has bungled the pandemic response and has put our local communities, state and local governments in a position of, playing from behind the eight ball constantly. And so I think people will remember that. This is the most important crisis, most difficult crisis any president has had to deal with, in our lifetimes. And, and it's pretty clear to say the president has gotten an F on that. We've been able to save lives because here in the local community, we've been able to put our public health professionals, our medical expertise out front. We haven't gotten everything right. There's no community that has, but we've been able to pivot as conditions demand, and we're going to continue to do our very best. But on the bars, Doug, there's a lot of rancor out there, and I just want to make something, I want to set the, level set a little bit.
Okay.
The governor's emergency orders that closed bars and restaurants, the bars are still closed, mandated by the governor of Texas right now. The governor's order does not lift until next week at the earliest. And so when we heard through Twitter, mind you, that the county judge would have the authority to open bars, we immediately said, we're not going to make this decision politically. We're going to ask our public health experts to get feedback and to deliberate on how and when we can best and safely open bars. And so they're doing that work right now. But under the governor's order, no bars are open until at least next week. We want to be prepared when that time comes that the governor's order is lifted.
Awesome. Well, I really, really thank you for you guys taking the approach that you're taking, because I'm just really, really concerned. I mean, I just see that now, even things such as attendance at professional sporting events and just all types of things. You see, in some states, there are people that are in attendance. Other states, there are people that are not in attendance. And you said something earlier. You talked about how, here in San Antonio, we haven't gotten everything right, but we look at what we did and we pivot and make changes based on the results. And I think if you have a unified methodology as approaching something as catastrophic as this pandemic, that at least if something goes wrong, you know what to fix.
Yes, absolutely. And again, that's why we always go back to our public health authorities. Politicians, elected officials are in a position to make policy, but it's ill-informed policy unless we lean on the experts in the field. And in this case, during a pandemic, it's our public health professionals, it's Metro Health, it's the doctors and nurses and hospital officials, first responders that are in the field managing this thing day to day to save lives. So we consult with them before we make these decisions, and that's exactly what we'll do in this case.
Awesome. That is fantastic. Now, we were talking about this, everything is kind of like tied together. About, I think it was Thursday or maybe it was even Wednesday last week, our governor once again had made a ruling about drop-off mailing locations per county. They restricted it down to one per county.
Yep. And just another in a series of maneuvers that we've seen state officials and federal officials do to, in my view, suppress the vote, make it harder or discourage people from voting. Barrett County has, in my opinion, done a whale of a job, great job, in creating more access for folks. The Mega Center, for instance, over at AT&T Center, is operational. It's set up for safe voting. We now have early voting sites available all over town that will remain open, and you can vote any place that has voting, any place that has voting on election day. You don't have to go to your particular precinct. So we've been working around what has been a long series history of state elected officials trying to suppress the vote, and created a situation where Texas has become one of the leading non-voting states. But we're going to do our best here locally with organizations like Move Texas and others to encourage people to go out and vote no matter how they can, and we're going to get it done. We're going to have a good turnout, and I think things are going to go very well.
Well, if we have a good turnout, there's going to be some really surprised people. So now, this whole thing about what the governor did, I believe that Texas has more counties than any other state. I think it's like 240, 238 or somewhere in there. And I think the lowest county has under 150 people. And then you have a county like Harris County or Bexar County. Bexar County's got, over 2 million people, and Harris County's got 4 million people. How can you have one drop-off place for a county such as those, but yet the same number for one with 150? That is just crazy.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because there's hundreds of thousands of mailboxes all over the county that people can drop their own personal vote in. But to have a central location that's secure is very important. And it's probably the logic by which the court last night overturned
it. Yeah.
That order from the governor. I thought it was a good decision by the court, and hopefully it sticks.
Well, I was going to ask you that. So right now, there is no limited drop-off points because of the judge's ruling last night. Correct?
That's correct. From my understanding, there was a temporary injunction granted in the suit brought by LULAC and others to help ensure there's no artificial suppression of the vote by reducing the drop-off centers in counties across the state.
Awesome, awesome. All right, a couple more here I got for you. So now, with respect to, I saw you had a great interview a couple last week on KSAT, really great ones. But I wanted to ask you the one they asked you about last week at KSAT, and it might have a little bit of a twist to it. But they talked about the public health crisis that the pandemic has been designated a public health crisis here in San Antonio. And so, I mean, I thought you gave a really compelling answer about what we could do around that. Could you share a little bit about that with us now?
Sure. There are policies that have been long since ruled unconstitutional that we continue to feel the effects of. Redlining, for instance, in San Antonio, created places where people of color could not buy and own houses, for instance. And what that has produced is a systemic disinvestment in certain parts of town. And that's highly correlated with income, it's highly correlated with educational attainment, it's highly correlated with race. And those disparities continue to persist today, and they're also linked to health outcomes. For instance, on the south side, we know that the mortality and the infection rate of this pandemic has been extraordinarily high because of the lack of access to things like preventative health services. That's a problem, and that is one of the reasons why it's very easy for anyone to understand that racism in our past and in our present has become literally a health crisis here in San Antonio and across the country, because it is linked so clearly to poor health outcomes for disadvantaged members of our community.
Wow, thank you. So, and just pivoting on that, so I mean, the whole country saw, probably the whole world saw what happened in Michigan with respect to the attempt. I don't know if it was an attempt or the plotting to kidnap the governor or harm the governor of Michigan. And then what do you think about that?
It's disturbing, to say the least. But I think that most people observing this administration over the last 4 years will agree that they didn't create racial divisions in this country, but they sure have exploited it and maybe brought it to a level that is, in some cases, normal, considered normal for people, to the point where you have these very clear racially and politically motivated attacks on people who are serving the community to help bridge these divisions. And I feel for Governor Whitmer, anyone who's serving in a high-profile position that is working very hard to address systemic racism and other issues that have divided our country is now seen by those who support those ideologies as the enemy. And we've got to combat that. This is a country that has ideals that we have not met, and it's on us as residents, as citizens of this country, to ensure we go closer to our ideals and not further away. And the attack on Governor Whitmer is an attempt to push us backward in time, not to move forward into progress.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. Again, I got a couple more minutes. I want to just two more things I wanted to touch on here. I've lived here for I know you've lived here longer than I have. I've lived here for over 20 years, and I've known Republicans, Independents. I mean, people from the the other Liberty Party or whatever it's called. And as far as I've known, I've never really met a bad person and someone I couldn't have a rational conversation. And we might differ, but we could get up and walk away and still, be cordial, And it seems that here in San Antonio, the Republican Party here has departed, if you will, the local Republican Party from the normal discourse that politicians have in the city. By they're calling out extremist people to come out and to harass people at polling places and registration places and all types of activities that they appear to be trying to organize. Did you know anything about that?
I've heard anecdotes, and it comes from all political stripes. that kind of discourse. But for our democracy to work, you described it best, Doug. We have to have civil discourse. We've got to be able to address our differences in a civil manner. And unfortunately, the rhetoric and the atmosphere out there is anything but. And that's what this administration federally has done over the last 4 years is made that normal. And we've got to reject that. It is not normal for us to let our divisions fester to the point where we are factions against one another in this country. We work together despite our differences, and we get closer and closer to our ideals of equal treatment under the law and equality among all people. And that's the America that I think is represented by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and that's the America I think that most of us want to get to.
Well, that's it. That's the America that you guys have been leading here in San Antonio. You and the county judge and the county commissioners and the city council. You guys have done an outstanding job. So I interviewed Nora O'Donnell. Do you know who she is?
Oh yeah, yes.
I got interviewed Nora O'Donnell. What a wonderful person, and she's from San Antonio, and she talked about how the San Antonio values and the friendliness of the treating others, like you would like to treat yourself or like you would like to be treated, and just how that has guided her life and been the cornerstone to her success. And then everyone around the country, you and the judge have become famous for being kind of like the calming voice, of local municipalities. But where do you think all of that comes from here in San Antonio? What makes us so different, even though we're a large city like everyone else?
I've thought a lot about that, and I'm sure everybody who lives here thinks a lot about that. I describe, when people ask me, what is it about San Antonio? I used to tell my friends that this is the only city in America, and maybe in the world, where a championship celebration can break out in the middle of the interstate, and it's a family-friendly event. This is a place where people get along, and I think it has a lot of factors to that. One of them is that we're a military city, and people respect the uniform, people respect people who serve others, people respect public service, and it goes beyond politics. So we're able to put those divisions as secondary to how life moves here in San Antonio. The other thing is that, we're a 300-year-old city. And throughout that 300 years, there's been a lot of challenges. There's been a lot of strife. We are the birthplace, in many ways, of the American Civil Rights Movement.
That's right.
And so throughout time, San Antonio has been a place where cultures and people from all over the world mix and mingle, and have to figure out a way to create community out of that, despite our differences. Actually, not despite our differences, because of our differences. Our diversity is what we find strength from, and I think that leads to that feeling that Nora O'Donnell described, which is that this is a place where people generally overcome cultural differences and create a family together, and that's what I love so much about San Antonio.
Mayor Ron Nirenberg from the city of San Antonio, thank you so much for your wise remarks today. So one last time before we go, people in San Antonio, we can go vote without fear of any type of intimidation, correct?
That's right. It's going to be safe. It's going to be set up so you can distance and wear a mask and make sure that, we're doing our proper precautions with regard to the pandemic. And we are going to make sure that no one is intimidated. To go vote, make sure you go to the polls and cast your ballot. This is probably the most important election of our lifetimes. Vote like your life depends on it, because it does. And let me also add, Doug, there's some very, very important initiatives at the end of the ballot. We are a city, we're a country in crisis, and part of our response to that is we've got to get our neighbors, our brothers and our sisters, our loved ones, our neighbors back on their feet. We've got a proposition on the ballot, Proposition B, SA Ready to Work, which is going to help 40,000 displaced workers get on job training programs to allow them to get credentials for jobs that are available today to help break cycles of generational poverty and also get San Antonio's economy back on a good trajectory. So let's help each other in need. Let's invest in our people, and let's all go vote yes on Prop B, SA Rated Work.
Thanks so much. Ron Nirenberg, Mayor of San Antonio, thanks so much, sir. Really appreciate you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much, Doug.
Okay.
Have a great day.
You do. KRV FM, the heart and soul of San Antonio. Once again, that was Mayor Ron Nirenberg. He is the mayor of San Antonio. Talked about a lot of things going on today, and you can see why the San Antonio has such a positive outlook. KRV FM, the heart and soul of San Antonio. Checking out right now. Everyone have a great day. Thanks for watching our Saturday conversation.